Hey, I don't know about you, but I'm like a magnet for awkward interactions. I feel like they just show up in my life, and let's be real, it's usually my fault. The other day, I was at a high school service at one of our campuses, and I was standing outside, and I was greeting people, and just the whole greeting setup places is awkward. You're giving fist bumps and high fives and handshakes to people that don't really want to get a fist bump or a high five or a handshake, and I'm sitting there feeling like I need to spice it up a little bit. I gotta add some flavor to this first-time greeting scenario, and what seems like out of the heavens, a volleyball bounced over to me and it rolled like in slow motion. I stopped it with my foot. And I kind of did a courtesy look around, like, is anybody missing a volleyball? Or did someone just drop kick it into space and forget about it? And I looked around, it didn't seem like anybody needed this volleyball. And so I picked it up and I'm bouncing it back and forth, kind of pretending that I don't really care about greeting. I'm doing this other thing and I'm greeting on the side, trying to make it seem less awkward. And what I realized is I see a guy walking up to me and I make eye contact. I look at him, he looks at me. Kind of give the nod, and I throw him the volleyball. He catches it, he throws it back to me, just guy stuff, exciting things. And now I see another guy, oh, this is great. Throw it to him, he throws it back. Throw it to this guy, he throws it back. We're kind of doing this fun little greet thing, and everybody's noticing it as they're walking up, and it's like pass, catch, pass, catch, pass, catch. I'm like Magic Johnson out here just throwing no-look passes, no-look, no-look, no-look. And all of a sudden, I no-look it to the side, and the ball just smokes this girl right in the face. And the whole vibe of this space, this area, just screeches to a halt. And I run over to her, and I'm hoping that maybe she's gonna laugh it off to kind of save me in this moment a little bit, but she doesn't. She's not super happy with me. She was mad. She stands up and she stomps into service. And guys, I felt like I wanted to just die. I felt like I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out of that hole ever again. It was so awkward. And this happened a long time ago, but when I talk about it, I still get that weird feeling you get when you talk about awkward scenarios. And guys, do you have awkward scenarios that you're into? And it's weird when they happen, you talk about them, they stick with you. But here's what's funny with awkward moments. Over time, I feel like awkward moments age well. I feel like they age like blocks of cheese. And what I mean by that is they eventually become funny. It might be a second later, a minute later, an hour, a day, a month, a year later. But oftentimes when we retell awkward stories, they're funny and we can laugh about them. So here's what we're gonna do. For the next few minutes in your group, why don't you share an awkward interaction you've had in the last couple months? And why don't coaches go first? I hope you realized something just now. Everybody is awkward. I'm awkward, you're awkward, your favorite celebrity is awkward. Well, I don't know, maybe not Adele. She seems like too classy to be awkward. The reality is, we all know that being awkward is just life. We all have to suffer through it moments, whether self-inflicted or caused by others. It's inevitable. But that doesn't really stop us from working incredibly hard to avoid scenarios that may end up being awkward. And for a lot of us, that fear of the awkward is why we would describe ourselves as antisocial. We avoid conversations with people, strangers or not, in order to avoid the possibility that we may have an interaction that goes sideways. Here's what's so tough though. Once we make a decision to pursue Jesus, once we realize what he's done for us, the way that he loves us unconditionally, the way that he saves us from pain and suffering, the pain and suffering that we deserve from not living perfectly, once we realize how amazing it is to have the creator of the universe in our corner, we have to come to terms with what that means for us, and we have to start taking action. The reality is that once we choose to be Christ-centered, our goal then is to be a difference maker. See what I did there? And the truth is, you can't be a difference maker if you avoid all social interactions, if you're, hang with me, antisocial.
We interrupt this program for an important news announcement.
Wow, Jake, that seems like a pretty wild statement. You're saying that I can't be like Jesus if I'm introverted, if I'm antisocial, if I'm shy? Hear me on this, that's not at all what I'm saying. Jesus can use everyone. He uses crazy, loud, extroverted people like me and quiet introverts like Mother Teresa. And did I just compare myself to Mother Teresa? I'll let you decide. Here's what we are trying to say in this series. How can we be people that are Jesus to others if we avoid actually interacting with others? It's impossible. In order to live a life that emulates Jesus, you will need to interact with somebody. So in this series, can you make it your goal to always think about what your specific next step is? Don't get caught up thinking that we are saying you can't be shy and be a difference maker. That's just totally untrue. We just want everyone to be willing to take some small steps away from their tendency to be antisocial. For some of you, fighting the urge to be antisocial could look like you interacting a little bit more with your brother or sister. For some of you, it's your mom and dad. And for some of you, maybe you can push out of your comfort zone a little and talk to the person next to you in math class. And for some of you wild extroverts like me, maybe your next step is to push out of your comfort zone and talk to the random guy in line at Subway. I don't know. The goal of this series is to get you to think about simply starting to reject your default desire just to be antisocial and take some small steps towards being like Jesus to the people in your life.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So why do you think it's so easy to fall into this antisocial mindset, this avoid others at all cost mindset? I honestly think there are a lot of reasons we tend to avoid social interactions. Maybe they're just too awkward, or maybe it's just scary talking to new people, or maybe for you, you honestly just don't care enough to engage with other people. Maybe you've been hurt before and it's made you insecure. And we consistently ask ourselves, hey, is this even worth it for me to engage relationally with someone else? So I'm curious, when you feel like being antisocial, what do you think the reason is? Why do you think you personally tend to avoid social interactions? Chat about that in your groups for a second. There are tons of reasons why we choose to be antisocial, tons of reasons that we may shy away from being Jesus to other people, and a lot of those reasons are real. Some of us are dealing with actual anxiety that's holding us back from engaging relationally with others. And I'm just gonna tell you that's okay. And I would encourage you, if you're dealing with that, man, go seek help. Go seek medical help for that. But for a lot of us, the reasons we disengage with people isn't medical. It's because we've allowed a fear or a falsehood to creep into our belief system. We've convinced ourselves that we are the only people in the world that have to deal with this fear. And the reality is it's just not true. All of us have to overcome small amounts of fear and anxiety on the daily. So in this series, we want to speak to some of the reasons we as junior high students tend to be antisocial, and talk about how we can overcome some of those reasons so that we can be incredible Christ-centered difference makers. Back to my magic moment. Things being awkward is the worst. But I think for most of us, we simply need to realize that awkward is inevitable. It's gonna happen whether we like it or not. And so why don't we just embrace it? The Bible tells this story of a dude named John the Baptist. He was tasked with the assignment of preparing the way for Jesus. He was told by God to go make people aware that there was this guy coming named Jesus, and this Jesus guy was gonna change the entire way that you view your life. Here's the problem though. John the Baptist was an outsider. Like literally, the Bible says in Matthew that John's clothes were made of camel's hair, and he had a leather belt wrapped around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. John lived his life differently. Now to be clear, John wasn't a crazy person. He had just chosen to live in the desert and eat this way as a protest to this life of overindulgence and abundance that he saw so many people taking a part in. And people did live in the desert at this time. It was kind of normal. I mean, we still live in the desert here. And the people that lived in the desert, they did actually eat locusts. That wasn't even that crazy. But John still was asked to go tell people that lived in Jerusalem about Jesus. And I bet to him, he knew that was gonna be awkward. He said, man, I gotta go talk to these city folk, all these people who don't live like me. I'm gonna have to explain to every single person I'm baptizing why I'm wearing weird clothes and eating bugs. Like, man, this is gonna be super awkward. I don't wanna do that. You probably felt similar to a lot of us when we notice someone who needs help, when we notice the kid sitting by himself at lunch, or we realize our friend missed a few days of school and now they're falling behind, when we see a kid that dropped all their books in the hallway. Like, hey, I know I should be helping that person, but it's just gonna be a little too awkward, and so we avoid it. John didn't back down though. John knew that what God was calling him to was way too important for him to avoid it simply because it was gonna be awkward. John embraced the awkward and spoke boldly to all that would listen that Jesus was coming. And guess what? Jesus did come. And John got to baptize Jesus, launching the beginning of Jesus' ministry here on earth. What an incredible moment that John got to be a part of. And I wonder for us, if we've missed opportunities to be Jesus to people simply because we haven't been willing to embrace the awkward. Man, imagine if this week we realized that what Jesus calls us to is way bigger than this fear of awkward. Well, what if this week we embraced the awkward and started an actual conversation with someone we've been avoiding? I wonder how God could use our boldness if we did a little bit of that this week. Let's be Christ-centered difference makers that engage relationally with the people around us, students that strive to be Jesus to others. Let's reject our desire to be antisocial and embrace the awkward this week.